Daniel Gorman and emotional intelligence. Good morning. Last time we learned that a single word, yet, can determine whether someone survives a setback or collapses under it. But knowing you should keep going and actually staying calm enough to do it are two very different things. What happens in the moment your body floods with frustration, embarrassment, or fear, right when you most need a clear head? Today, we ask a question every one of the thinkers before us assumed an answer to, but never actually explained. What do you do with the feeling itself in real time? We arrive in 1995 with a science journalist and psychologist named Daniel Goleman. He wasn't the first to use the term emotional intelligence. Psychologists Peter Salovey and John Mayer had defined it academically a few years earlier, but Goleman's 1995 book of the same name took the concept out of academic journals entirely and placed it directly in front of parents, teachers, and business leaders. Goleman was writing at a moment when standardized testing and IQ dominated how society measured potential and predicted success. He set out to challenge that assumption directly, drawing on emerging neuroscience about the brain's emotional centers to argue that something else was quietly determining outcomes just as powerfully, if not more so. Goleman proposed that emotional intelligence rests on 5 interlocking components: self-awareness, recognizing your own emotions as they arise rather than being blindsided by them; self-regulation, managing disruptive emotions and impulsive rather than being controlled by them; motivation, channeling emotion in service of long-term goals rather than immediate gratification; empathy, correctly sensing and understanding the emotions of others; and social skill, using all of the above to manage relationships and navigate social situations effectively. His central claim was broad. These 5 capacities, taken together, often predict success in life and work more powerfully than raw cognitive intelligence alone. Brilliant strategists who cannot regulate their temper, or a skilled expert who cannot read a room, will frequently underperform a less technically gifted person who manages both themselves and their relationships well. Sociologically, emotional intelligence reframed leadership and workplace success in a way that rippled through entire industries. Where earlier eras of management theory prized decisiveness, technical mastery, and even a degree of emotional detachment as marks of professionalism, Goleman's framework legitimized empathy, self-awareness, and relation skill as core professional competencies, not soft extras. This had a real institutional effect. Corporate hiring, leadership development, and management training began measuring and teaching emotional intelligence explicitly, treating it as trainable infrastructure rather than fixed personality. Also connects directly back to Carnegie decades earlier. Goleman essentially gave scientific grounding and a formal name to institutions, to intuitions Carnegie had been teaching informally since 1936. Psychologically, Goleman's work drew on real neuroscience, particularly research into the amygdala's role in triggering fast, sometimes disproportionate emotional reactions before the brain's more deliberate reasoning regions can fully engage, a phenomena popularized as the amygdala hijack. This offered something genuinely useful, a biological explanation for why self-regulation is a skill, not just a matter of willpower or character. Understanding that a flash of anger or panic is a fast neurological reflex, not a considered judgment, gives people an actual entry point for intervening, creating a pause between stimulus and response, a concept later popularized further through mindfulness-based approaches to emotional regulation. But emotional intelligence, too, has drawn real scientific scrutiny. Critics point out that emotional intelligence has proven notoriously difficult to measure with real psychometric rigor, and that self-report questionnaires, the most common measurement tool, are easily distorted by people's own inflated self-perception, undermining some of the bold predictive claims made in Goleman's more popular writing. Some psychologists argue the concept has become so broad, absorbing empathy, motivation, social skill, and self-control all at once, that it risks becoming an umbrella term for being a well-adjusted person, rather than a precise, testable psychological construct. There are also concerns about how emotional intelligence gets applied in practice. Workplaces sometimes use it to informally penalize employees, often women, and people from cultures with different norms around emotional expression, for displaying entirely appropriate emotions like frustration or disagreement, mislabeling authentic reaction as the deficiency in self-control. So why does a 1995 popular science book still matter today? Because emotional intelligence fundamentally changed what leadership training, therapy, and even parenting advice sound like today. Concepts like naming your emotions, taking a breath before responding, and reading the room are now common cultural vocabulary, largely because Goleman translated academic psychology into language ordinary people and organizations could actually put into practice. It also anticipates something distinctly urgent in 2026 as more of daily communication moves through screens, stripped of tone and facial expression. The specific skills of accurately reading and regulating emotion, both your own and others, have arguably become harder to practice and more essential to protect deliberately. So we've moved from Carnegie's outward connection through Maslow's needs, Bandura's belief, Mihaly's engagement, and Dweck's resilience through failure, and now to Goleman's account of managing the feelings that rise throughout that entire journey in real time. But emotional intelligence, for all its practical value, still centers on the individual managing their own internal world and their immediate relationships. It says far less about how a person builds an entire life around consistent values, principles, and character over time. The deeper architecture that emotional skill alone doesn't fully provide. That question belongs to our final chapter in this arc, Stephen Covey and the idea of building life, not just a skill set around durable principles rather than momentary technique that we'll see next session. Thank you very much and see you next.